human beings. PowerGamer here. What do you do when nobody bought the pair of shoes that you were selling? Well, that's simple. Just find a new market where people actually do buy shoes, sell another pair, and this time make sure you add a little bit of spice to it, just in case people actually did buy the first one.
Splatoon 2, the sequel that exists largely because the first one was left behind a massive gate, and by that I mean gamepad. Yeah, everyone knows that the Wii U was a pretty big flop for Nintendo, but Splatoon was one of the few titles that managed to have some success on the console. So when they were bringing their next console around, they figured this would be a good opportunity to keep the fans that they had, as well as bring in some new ones. Now after the first Splatoon game was released, it continued to receive content via free updates throughout the following months, with the last one taking place in October 2015, roughly 5 months after the game first launched. Around this time, the development team began working on what a follow-up would look like, especially since by this point the Nintendo Switch had started development. So their initial idea was simply creating an enhanced version of the Wii U game, but they decided to turn it into a proper sequel to improve on its mechanics, which was probably for the best in the long run given how many Wii U to Switch ports we would end up getting later. Many aspects of the game were kept from the original, though plenty of stuff was added, like new weapons and some control tweaks. Most notably, the option to jump to specific locations in the hub world and in combat had to be mapped to the menu as opposed to just tapping the gamepad screen. They also wanted to add to the world building by having time actually progress by 2 years, which was the amount of time that it took between this and the first game to release. They mainly did this by making slight changes to some of the music and clothing styles, as well as aging up a few of the characters. Most notably the Squid sisters, Callie and Mary, who went from 17 to 19, making all of that artwork online less creepy. Slightly. The game was first revealed at the Nintendo Switch announcement trailer in October of 2016, and it was officially announced at the Switch's reveal presentation in January of 2017, where it was confirmed to be a sequel rather than just a port. Much like the first game, a small demo was released for a limited time prior to the game's official release. Splatoon 2 was released for the Switch on July 21st, 2017, only a few months after the console launched, and it quickly became one of the de facto online multiplayer games of the system, alongside Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and later Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The game sold more than double, heck, almost triple the amount of copies that the first one did, with over 13.6 million copies sold worldwide. Reception was about on par with the first game, which is to say it was super positive, and also like the first game, it would continue to get extra content via free updates as time went on. Though unlike the first game, I wouldn't say it was one of the console's most defining titles. I mean, it definitely was early on, but nowadays I don't see people talking about it as much as some of the other early Switch games like Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey. Though part of that may be because unlike the Wii U, the Switch had a smorgasbord of great games to play, including a third entry, which likely stole a lot of the second game's thunder.
Like a lot of other people, this was one of the first games I got for my Switch, and I had a pretty good time with it. While I certainly didn't put as many hours into it as most people did, I still played it a decent amount. Though, now that I actually have the first game under my belt, and I've at least dabbled in the third one, is this one still worth playing? Well, let's hop into the ink and find out.
Much like the first game, we create a character and open with a tutorial showing off the basics. At the end, you reach Inkopolis and watch a news broadcast, this time being hosted by DJs Pearl and Marina. They explain that the Great Zapfish has once again gone missing, but this time Callie of the Squid Sisters has also gone missing. If you go through this manhole cover, you'll find Mary, who asks you to help save the Zapfish from the Octarians once again, and find Callie, with you being given the title of Agent 4, since Agent 3 was the main character from the last game. Yeah, the story is basically identical to the first game, only you're being guided by Mary instead of Captain Cuttlefish, along with some assistance from this weapons expert named Sheldon. Kinda underwhelming, but the game is at least semi-aware of this, so I guess I can give it a pass. If there's one area I can say the game has been upgraded from before, it's the visuals. The first game looked great, but this one looks even better, since we have much more varied environments, and the ink especially looks way shinier, at least I think it does. And the music is still filled with some funky, fresh tunes that you and your crew can easily jam out to. I can't believe I just said that. Now, the gameplay is almost identical to the first game in both single-player and multiplayer. You shoot ink everywhere and can transform into a squid to swim through it, which refills your supply, and you have a plethora of weapons and sub-weapons. Once again, you mainly aim with the right stick, though you have the option of using gyro controls, which is what I personally go for, and unlike the first game, you actually have a few different controller options, and I always go with the Pro Controller since the triggers on it feel infinitely better than the Joy-Cons. But this game isn't just a carbon copy, it does have some differences, with the main one being a plethora of new weapons. There are quite a few variations on old types of weapons, but there's also 3 completely new classes. Dualies, which are dual shooters that are weaker but faster, and allow you to dodge roll, making them much better than normal shooters, at least for me anyway. Blasters, which are strong but slow shooters that take forever, so yeah, not a fan. And umbrellas, which I did not expect to actually be a possible weapon. They shoot globs much like the blaster, but if you hold it down, you open the umbrella, which can act as a shield, and after a few seconds, it'll fly forward, leaving a trail of ink. A unique idea, but I find it a bit too situational to really be effective. The rollers are still my go-to weapon, but I will dabble in the dualies every once in a while.
The weapons are easily the biggest change to this game, because once we dive into the actual modes, things will feel a lot more familiar if you played the first one.
The single-player campaign is virtually identical to how it was in the first game. It's divided into 5 areas with a set number of stages, and your goal is to reach the end of the stage and grab the Zapfish while fighting fighting off enemies. The levels are structured pretty similarly, although there are a handful of new obstacles like grapplings, which you shoot to grapple onto, or squid rings, which you can go through to get extra orbs for upgrades. The biggest difference is that you can actually use every weapon in the game as opposed to only using the shooters. Most of the levels have you use a certain weapon in your first run through under the guise of Sheldon wanting you to test it out for him. However, once you beat it, you can replay the stage with any weapon you want. In fact, you have to beat every stage with every weapon in order to complete the game 100%, which, yeah, I'm not doing that. This alone makes the single-player mode pretty different from before, and it's not just because you're using a different weapon. Most of the stages were designed with specific weapons in mind, which allows for much more varied and creative level design. It can make replaying some extremely annoying, but that's optional, so it just gives you some added challenge. Outside, all of the weapons can be upgraded with orbs and sardinium you collect throughout the levels, though each upgrade requires a ton of orbs in order to do it, so I only did like one, plus purchasing some extra bombs. Once again, you've got 3 bomb types, being standard, sliding ones, and ones that home in on targets before exploding. You can also find plenty of these cans that give you super attacks, much like the ones you use in multiplayer, like a giant supply of bombs, making a cloud that rains down ink, tenta missiles which lock on enemies, and splashdown which completely covers the surrounding area. And every once in a while, you'll find a turret that lets you shoot missiles. You can also collect tickets to buy extra weapons in the shop, and scrolls which give you more backstory like in the first game. Plus, there's armor which you can grab to take more hits, and I don't think these were in the first game, but if they were, I didn't notice them. Or I just forgot, that's possible too. It has been a while, and I did hit my head pretty hard on that hiking trip. Aside from that stuff, the only thing really added are some new enemies and specific level obstacles, but we can get more into those later. Well, that is on top of the fact that this game is honestly quite a bit harder than the first one was. I got way more game overs here than I did in the first game, so you gotta be on top of things much more this time.
That's really all that's new to the single-player stuff, which still isn't much, but the multiplayer is somehow even less different.
Once again, you walk into the lobby and select a standard match, which is just turf war or a ranked battle if you're at least level 10, though there is this new mode called League Battles, and these are the exact same modes as ranked battles, so I never bothered to get a high enough rank to test them out. Turf war works exactly the same as it did in the first game. You're assigned a color and have to cover the floors in as much of it as possible. Whoever covers the most wins. Aside from the new weapons and some new special abilities like surrounding yourself in an exploding hamster ball, there's nothing in this mode that wasn't seen in the last game. Well, aside from some new stages, but I'll get to those in a minute. Ranked battles are also pretty similar since all of the previous modes come back. Tower control, where you stand on a tower to have it move into the enemy's base. Splat zone, where you need to cover the center in your team's ink for as much time as possible. And Rainmaker, where you want to carry the Rainmaker to the other side. So my feelings on these are the same as before. Tower control can be fun, Rainmaker is whatever, not a fan of Splat zone. Well, okay, aside from this one match where my team made an amazing comeback. However, we do have one new mode in the form of Clam Blitz. This mode is honestly pretty confusing since the game does not explain it very well, but basically this is how it works. Each team has a net that's surrounded by a barrier. You need to pick up a football and bring it over to the net to destroy the barrier for a short period of time. You then need to pick up these clams that are scattered everywhere and throw them into the net, which extends the time period the barrier is down. Whichever team throws in 100 clams first or has thrown more in when time runs out is the winner. Like I said, this game doesn't really explain how this mode actually works, so my first couple of matches in this mode sucked, but once you actually figure it out, it can be pretty fun and hectic. The ranked battles in this game were really annoying for me because barely anyone is playing them now, so there's only like a 20% chance you can actually find a match. Seriously, there were multiple times where I went 10 to 20 minutes with no luck whatsoever, with the worst moment being when we got a full thing of 8 players at the last possible second, meaning it didn't count. And this is why I didn't bother unlocking League Battles, since it was not worth it, and like I said, they're basically the same thing as ranked battles. As for the stages themselves, we have a pretty good balance of new ones and ones that come back from the first game. The returning ones are Walleye Warehouse, Anchovy Games, Arowana Mall, Camp Triggerfish, Kelp Dome, Moray Towers, Piranha Pit, Port Mackerel, and Black Belly Skate Park. But for new stages, we have New Albacore Hotel, which is a hotel pool, Starfish Main Stage, which is a concert arena, The Reef, which is just kind of a hangout spot, Manta Maria, which is a giant ship, Humpback Pump Track, which is a BMX track that seems kind of redundant since we already had a skate park, Inkblot Art Academy, which is an outdoor school, Schellendorf Institute, which is a history museum, Muscle Forge Fitness, which is a gym, Wahoo World, which is an amusement park, Mako Mart, which is a supermarket, Gobi Arena, which is a basketball arena, Sturgeon Shipyard, which is a shipyard that's also kind of redundant, Snapper Canal, which is a residential area with a river, and Skipper Pavilion, which is an old Japanese theater, and that's neat. Overall, a pretty good selection of stages, with a couple that are similar, but for the most part, we got some good variety. Though the biggest improvement for multiplayer is that the stages rotate every 2 hours instead of 4, which is extremely nice. But sadly, we don't have a jumping minigame on the loading screen anymore, since, well, there's no gamepad to look at, and that means this minigame is officially lost media.
So far, this game just sounds like a slightly updated version of the first one, and to some extent, it kinda is. But there is one mode I have yet to discuss, and that is because it is easily the biggest addition to the series. Salmon Run.
Every once in a while, you'll be able to go through here and speak with this guy named Mr. Grizz, who will offer you a job fetching salmon eggs. You're then paired up with 3 other players and put in a watery arena with randomly assigned weapons where you have to fend off hordes of mutant robot salmon, including giant ones, and when you kill them, you can grab some eggs and put them in this giant basket. There's 5 different stages to play on, and each round consists of 3 hordes, unless everyone dies at the same time. Once complete, you get payment and can increase your rank, which gives you more rewards. Honestly, I think Salmon Run is the best part of the game. Fending off wave after wave of these giant fish monsters is way more fun than it should be. It keeps the team aspect of the main multiplayer mode without the frustration that the competitive nature can provide. And even then, the core gameplay is just a total blast. I love Salmon Run. This is easily the mode I get the most enjoyment from in this game. The only issue is that it's only available at sporadic times when the game decides it. You can't just play this mode whenever you want, which is insanely stupid. I get the idea is that it's only available when the character needs a job to be done, so it's done for world building's sake, but I don't care. This is still a game, and I want to play more of the fun part of the game. But whatever, let's focus more on the story. Starting off in Sector 1, the Tentacule Outpost, our first level is Return of the Octarians, a pretty standard opener that gets you established or re-established with the game's mechanics. Only major thing it shows off is the exploding balloons. Welcome to Octopia. This level brings back the sponges, and it's set in a more beachy area, which I like. Sunset Octocopter brings back flying enemies and these giant ink spinners. The boss stage is Industrial Toast, where you fight the Octo Oven, a giant oven that juts out loaves of bread. You gotta ink the side and climb up to shoot the tentacle, but as the fight continues, the area you can ink becomes limited. Now I know that sounds exactly like the first game's opening boss, but this one is different. It also shoots ink spinners and these ink rain things. After that, we get a call where Mary thanks us and we meet Sheldon. Moving on to Sector 2, Suction Cup Lookout, this is where the game starts to give you new weapons. Enter the Octo Hurler, you use the roller for the first time, and use Rollonium Bundles, which are bundles of logs that launch forward when you hit them. The Octo Park, you use Doolies for the first time and grind on a bunch of ink rails. Octo Zeppelin Invasion, you use the Charger for the first time, and it introduces stuff like grapplings, Octo Zeppelins, missiles, and propeller platforms. Back Alley Cleanup brings back the squeegees. Oh, now I get it. And sometimes you gotta lure them around to use them as platforms, which would be really fun if these things actually cooperated. No, over here, don't go that way, go this way, come on, you stupid thing, no! Spinning Campground introduces ink furlers, which are platforms that unfurl when you shoot them, but only for a short period of time, and you can use them to kill enemies, which is awesome. Octoling Strike is one of those stages where you fight off a bunch of Octolings like in the first game, though here it works differently, since instead of getting one Zapfish, you need to grab 8 smaller ones. The showdown, you face off against the Octo Samurai. You just gotta smack him with the roller while he tries to smack you with his, and he rides around on it like a motorcycle. After that, there's another call with some interference from whoever this is.
Well, I sure don't have a single guess as to who this mysterious stranger could be under any circumstance whatsoever.
Next up is Sector 3, Beaker's Depot, which is where the hub world starts to get a lot more fancy with how you navigate it, and it can be kind of annoying. Octoseeker Shakedown, you use the slosher for the first time and have to avoid Octoseekers that'll slam down on you, plus occasionally riding them. The Floating Garden, only thing of note is these really annoying enemies that run away and throw bombs. Octo Resort Spring, another watery level, but this time with bouncy cushions. Dancing Floors, you get the Splatling for the first time, that's the Gatling gun, and use it to shoot these spinning switches to move platforms. Parking Garage is a bunch of old abandoned cars. Doesn't really affect the gameplay that much, but it's kinda cool. Octoling Assault is another Octoling brawl. And finally, Lips for Days is a rematch with the Octo Stomp from the first game. He does this whole slam his face and slide thing, but now he puts on this cushion you need to shoot the strap of to make him vulnerable, and then he gets 3 faces. Another call where Mary reveals her main objective is to find her cousin, Callie. Wait, cousin? I thought they were sisters. Are you seriously telling me their sibling dynamic was just a brand thing this whole time? Oh, whatever. She mentioned she was supposed to protect Inkopolis while Captain Cuttlefish is away, and that weird voice tells us to leave. Sector 4, Slime Skin Garrison. What the hell is that name? Secret Bowling Alley introduces these rolling ball enemies you have to hit in the perfect spot to destroy, kind of like the boulders from Mario Galaxy. Octo Commander Fortress brings back the spinning platforms and not much else. Towering Heights is continuous climbing with a bunch of enemies and ends with a moving platform. The Experimentorium, you use the blaster for the first time, and you have to go down 3 different paths to get keys and open this door, which is a fun idea. Propellerland gives you the umbrella, so this level is largely built around protecting yourself with some propeller and invisible platforms for good measure. Octolings Away is our third Octoling barrage, and the boss stage is Sanitizarium, where you fight the Octo Shower, a giant flying saucer that hits you with as much ink as possible. Rain, missiles, blobs, you name it. You gotta climb up these towers and shoot the enemies chained to the top to expose his tentacle. We get another call from that person telling us to leave, and Mary finally recognizes that it's Callie and wonders why she's working with the Octarians. We finally reach Sector 5, Cephalon HQ, where the hub world is a whole level in of itself. Seriously, I spent like 10 minutes just looking around for all the manholes. Underground Expressway gives you the final weapon, the brush, and you mainly use it to reveal invisible ground. The Octo Galaxy, oh crap, is a gauntlet of really tight platforming challenges. Transfer Junction is a bunch of moving platforms over water, which gave me way more trouble than I'd like to admit. Platform Madhouse is a bunch of enemies on moving platforms. Paradise Lanes is mostly narrow platforms you can easily get knocked off of. And Octoling Workout is the last Octoling battle. Now we unlock the final boss, Bomb Rush Blush. We finally find Callie, who's being mind-controlled by the returning DJ Octavio. The fight with Octobot King 2 has you mainly shooting his punches to send them flying back at him, much like the first game. You can't deflect the spinning punches, and he shoots tons of stuff like bombs and these guys that turn into pillars. After 2 phases, Sheldon and Mary come in, and Mary snipes the tentacle off of Callie's head. Another round where he causes rain, and Callie regains her mind, so the 2 cousin sisters break out into song. Sheldon gives you the Rainmaker, and the final phase is you grinding on these rails and using it to shoot the fists while jumping over the spinning ones. After enough hits, DJ Octavio goes down once again. Overall, a sign of final boss, though the final phase can be a little finicky. Much like the last game, we end with a broadcast where Marina and Pearl announce that the Great Sapfish and Callie have returned. We get another paint shoot credits, and if you go back after beating the game, the Squid Cousins will thank you, and we find DJ Octavio in a bowl, which is hilarious.
That's the end of the main game, but we're not actually done just yet, because Splatoon 2 actually got some DLC that contains an entirely separate campaign called the Octo expansion, so let's check that out.
Once you download this, you can access it via the staircase in the way back of Inkopolis Square. This is an entirely new campaign that actually places you in control of an Octoling rather than an Inkling, which is purely a cosmetic difference. The control exactly the same. The story has your character awaken in a subway tunnel with Captain Cuttlefish, so that's where he went. Captain says you were fighting Agent 3 when you got knocked down there by something, and they've gone missing, but neither of you can remember the fine details, so he decides to call a truce until you get out of there. After some walking, they find this phone and get a call promising they can reach somewhere called the Promised Land if they take this ID card and hop on a train. Here they meet a sea slug named CQ Cumber, who explains that they're in an underground testing facility owned by Kamabo Corporation. If they want to reach the Promised Land, they have to complete a series of test chambers until they collect 4 Thangs. I have no idea what those are, but they figure they have no other choice and agree, with Cuttlefish giving you the nickname Agent 8. And along the way, they end up being contacted by Pearl and Marina, who offer to help them because they just like doing that. This campaign has a more traditional mission structure than the main game does. You select a mission via the Metro's train line and have to complete whatever challenge it gives you. Once you arrive, you're given a weapon, and unlike the main game, each one is only temporary. Some missions give you a choice, but there's always one that's recommended, and some missions don't give you one at all. Sometimes you also have to use a special weapon like the ball or jetpack, which is fun. Once you're equipped, you pass through a turnstile and have to pay using these points that you get by completing missions. You only have a certain number of lives, and unlike the main game, they're not restored if you pass a checkpoint. Though once you run out, all that happens is the game charges you again, and you can pick up at the checkpoint you just passed. The missions themselves are where this mode really differs from the main game. They can range from simply reaching the goal, to pushing a ball into the goal, to destroying targets, killing enemies, or even just playing a round of tower control or Rainmaker. Sometimes you have to do this under a time limit, and sometimes you have a limited supply of ink. And that's really about it. Octo expansion is pretty much just completing missions to get points, and then you use those points to unlock more missions. Like I said, the missions are placed on different rail lines of the train system, and there's 80 in total. Now thankfully you don't have to beat all of them in order to finish the mode. You only need to do the ones that let you reach the 4 Thangs, but to do that you have to complete the missions that lead up to it in an adjacent order, and this game doesn't tell you where they are until you unlock the line it's on. So the best course of action is to unlock as many lines as possible and go from there. And thankfully the missions that unlock lines are marked with a square instead of a circle. So you have a little bit of freedom in how you progress, which is good because this campaign is significantly harder than the main one. Most of these challenges are extremely picky with how you do them, and some of them don't let you make a single mistake or else you start the whole thing all over again. The worst for me being the ones where you have to grind on rails and shoot targets, because if you miss one or hit a single obstacle, you lose instantly. And there's no checkpoints, so you have to do it all in one go. Granted, you can ask Pearl and Marina for help if you die enough times, but that just skips the mission, so it feels like cheating. So while Octo expansion can be a decent way to get more time out of this game, I'd only fully recommend it to those who want a decent challenge. Though I do love how the levels just have a bunch of Nintendo consoles floating in the background. Your main reward for doing missions is some extra clothing items from this guy by finishing every mission in a line, as well as some chat logs between Captain Cuttlefish and the DJs, which can provide some fun character insights. Like learning Marina is actually an Octoling, which the hair kinda gives away.
Now I am not gonna bother going over every single mission since that will be insanely repetitive, and I didn't even do all of them, so let's just take a look at what happens at the end, because that's the only part that actually has any sort of plot development.
Once you collect all 4 things, the phone assembles them into a giant blender and tries to kill Agent 8 and Captain Cuttlefish, but Marina manages to activate a distress call allowing Agent 3 to come in and save them. Now earlier in the game, Cuttlefish asks you to describe Agent 3, and you're intended to make them look like your avatar from the first game, but I got impatient and just smashed my way through it, so oops. Agent 3 gets knocked out, so Cuttlefish stays behind with them while Agent 8 launches themselves through this hole. The final sequence of Octo expansion has you climb up this tower, which is divided into 7 levels, or phases. Phase 1 is a stealth section where you have to avoid enemies since you don't have a weapon, which is a fun idea. Phase 2 starts out with more stealth, but then you get bombs and a shooter letting you fight back. Phase 3 is you jumping across falling platforms over a bunch of water. Phase 4 is sneaking through a bunch of lasers. Phase 5 is the longest since you have to grab an ink pack and then fly around shooting these laser crystals so you can grab them and open a lock, which takes forever. Phase 6, you have to shoot this orb to move the platform while preventing it from getting hit by enemies and obstacles. And finally, Phase 7 is you hop in this elevator only to find Agent 3 has been brainwashed by the phone, so you literally have to fight your character from the first game, assuming you did it right, unlike me. And that's really cool. You gotta shoot them while they fire back and unload a bunch of strong abilities on you. Bombs, splashdown, a giant laser, anything really. It's pretty tough, but it's also pretty fun once you finally beat them. After that, we finally reach the surface, and Marina and Pearl are there to greet us. Pearl and Cuttlefish have a rap battle, but then this giant statue emerges from the water. The phone reveals that it's an AI named Tartar who was made 12,000 years ago by a human professor to pass on knowledge to the next worthy life form. I had decided that Inklings and Octolings were crazy, so it came to the same conclusion as all other evil AIs: destroy the world. The statue is is apparently a super weapon that when fully charged will wipe out Inkopolis, so Marina comes up with a plan. The statue is powered by solar energy, so we need to cover it in ink by having Marina attach these bombs to it and then having us detonate them. So the final boss has you run around the statue and shoot all 30 bombs in under 3 minutes. You really need to be on your A game, because if you go the wrong way or end up missing one, you can be screwed, and the game actually shows you Inkopolis getting destroyed if you fail, which just seems harsh. It can be tough, but it is a really fun idea. Once it's covered in ink, the others swoop in to save you, and Pearl unleashes a giant sound wave laser, which manages to destroy it. Tartar is destroyed, and everyone celebrates by watching these firework credits. After beating Octo Expansion, you're actually able to play as an Octoling in multiplayer matches, but I've had more than enough of this game for a while, so we're done.
Splatoon 2 is very much more of the same. The main bulk of the game is nearly identical to the first game, and the only thing really added is Salmon Run, plus a couple new weapons and stages, and the Octo Expansion DLC if you're interested. So it's not a great sequel, but it is a great game, since it still has most of what made the original work, and given how many people missed out on the first game due to not owning a Wii U, keeping things simple was probably for the best in the long run, though hopefully the third game will make some more drastic changes, but we'll get there when we get there. For now, I need to call up one of my cousins and tell them that if we pretend to be siblings, it'll make a great brand name. Oh. Wait, never mind, I don't actually know any of my cousins.